Okay, thank you. Good evening. So our audit results report is a key audit assurance report to you as a committee. So the key points that I'd like to draw your attention cover the following areas. So firstly, in terms of audit risk and materiality, which is on page 6 of our report, subsequent to the presentation of our audit plan in June last year, we have identified an additional fraud risk in relation to the collectability of a government grant, the details of which are set out on page 6 and 17. The inclusion of this fraud risk also elevated the risk of the whole audit to one of a close monitoring designation, which in turn requires us to lower our materiality threshold to be able to perform testing at an appropriate level to detect fraud and error in the financial statements. We did therefore lower our materiality based on the draft financial statements to 531,000, with a reporting difference of £27,000 to you this evening. Clearly, the higher the audit risk to our audit opinion, the lower the materiality we set and the greater the amount of testing we are required to do in order to gain sufficient appropriate audit assurance. In terms of status of the audit, which is on page 7, our work is almost complete. We've just got final closing procedures to do tomorrow. At the time we issued this report, we did set out that our work on journals had yet to be completed. That has now been completed and there are no new matters to bring to your attention. We haven't, however, been able to perform all of our audit procedures over the closing 31st of March 25 balance sheet and in-year income and expenditure transactions, given some limitations in the provision of audit information. The key areas we've not been able to conclude on are set out in Appendix B, but in summary are or relate to grants received in advance, heritage assets, housing revenue account, dwelling valuations, and the implementation of the new lease standard IFRS 16. The Council's accounts for 2021, 21, 22 and 22, 23 were each disclaimed because of a previously reported management integrity issue, and our 23, 24 audit opinion was disclaimed as the draft financial statements weren't provided for audit in a suitable time frame to allow us to perform audit procedures ahead of the backstop date. Therefore, there is a pervasive gap in audit assurance for opening balances and indeed in-year comparative movements, a gap which cannot be bridged and which will therefore lead to a disclaimed audit opinion over these 24-25 financial statements being issued. Page 28 of our report sets out the adjusted audit differences that have come about from our audit procedures, and there are 5 of those that have been identified, and those are adjusted for within the revised financial statements before you this evening, and Carrie has taken you through those in her paper. We also requested that the annual governance statement be updated, and again, the updated version has been before the leader and the chief executive. And that update reflects the findings of our audit in respect of value for money weaknesses. In terms of unadjusted audit differences on page 29, there are 5 of those. They all fall above our £27,000 reporting threshold, but none are individually or collectively material. And on that grounds, management have chosen not to adjust the revised financial statements for them, and it would be for you as a committee to concur with their view or ask them to amend it. And if you concur with that view, that would need to be set out in the letter of representation to us. Section 2 and sets out all of the audit risks we had in the audit plan and indeed the audit assurances we have got against each of those. But for me, the key for you as a committee is to note the new risk of uncollectability of grant income, which is set out in page 17 in detail. Following our audit procedures, it was clear that the £1.8 million debtor balance held at the 31st of March 24 was not recoverable, and therefore a prior year adjustment would need to be made to the financial statements in respect of the balance at that date, with an appropriate disclosure note alongside it. And Carrie has set out that in her paper for you this evening. In addition, The grants received in advance area of our audit was one we were unable to complete, as the council could not support with audit evidence a grant of £252,000 within our sample. So therefore, grant accounting is one area which needs significant attention as you go into the financial close down for the 25-26 set of financial statements. And we therefore have raised a control recommendation and weakness in respect of that. Those control weaknesses are set out on pages 31 and 32 in section 6 of our report, and we have 3 control weaknesses with recommendations for each, and all of the 3 relate either to our value for money significant weaknesses, which I will come on to, or the item of account because of a lack of audit evidence. Management's response to those recommendations will be included in our auditor's annual report, which will follow the conclusion of our audit. That takes us to section 3, which is on value for money. We identified 4 risks of weakness in value for money arrangements at the council, but we have concluded that only 2 of those risks actually manifest themselves in actual weaknesses in the council's arrangements, and they will be reported as an other matter within our audit opinion. Pages 22 and 23 have a summary of the 4 risks that we identified, and page 24 has the detail of how we have concluded that 2 of those, in relation to the social housing regulator report and procurement and contract management, have led to a significant weakness. Our auditor's annual report will include a commentary or more detailed commentary for each of those 2 that have manifested themselves in a weakness alongside other arrangements the council has in place. Section 7 of our report is in relation to statutory recommendations. For every audit, we do give due consideration as to whether we need to exercise our auditor powers, and on this occasion we have concluded that we will be minded to exercise our power to issue statutory recommendations under Schedule 7 of Section 27 of the Local Audit and Accountability Act, as set out on page 34. When we do formally issue statutory recommendations, the council will need to consider and respond to those recommendations formally through a full council meeting held within a month of the date of issue, unless otherwise agreed with me for a longer time period. We have deemed it necessary to exercise our power on this occasion in order to support the improvement journey that the council is on, and because of the number of adverse inspection reports, our own findings, and indeed external investigator findings and reports, which have led to a plethora of recommendations. In order to see that improvement, it's our view that having a clear line of sight of all the recommendations stemming from all of those reports is brought together and collated alongside robust monitoring and scrutiny of the implementation of the actions to drive that improvement. I am, though, encouraged by my discussions with the Chief Executive on the future direction of the council, and that there have been a lot of issues that have been raised in the last 12 months, and action is being seen to be taken against them. But closing out those issues promptly and effectively is now the key to that improvement journey. As a committee, we have 2 tables in our report which I think would be of interest to you. The first is on page 11 and 12, and that looks at how well the authority has prepared for and supported the external audit process. So the council did prepare draft accounts by the account and audit regulation deadline this year, which is clearly a significant improvement on the 23-24 position. But the annual governance statement did not form part of that published pack, and it is a key part of the statement of accounts, so was therefore missing at the date of publication. As you can see from those 2 pages, we have marked all areas as requiring improvement, with the exception of timeliness and quality of audit evidence to support key estimates. And that is because the Housing Revenue Account Stock Condition Survey was not complete, and that would be a key driver for the valuation of those properties. We have, however, assessed the access to the finance team and indeed senior management as effective, as we have had a good, open and transparent dialogue through the audit with both the Chief Executive and the finance team. But clearly there is some work to do to further strengthen the council's approach to financial reporting. The second timetable is Appendix B on page 41, and this table sets out the assurances we've been able to gain during the audit compared to last year's audit via the respective columns, so a significant improvement in where we have been able to gain that assurance. And then my last point is on the timeline to an unqualified opinion, which is, I'm sure, is key to you as members and indeed to us as auditors. And page 40 sets out the proposed timeline that the National Audit Office foresaw in rebuilding audit assurances to get back to an unqualified opinion. However, their timetable is predicated on only having a single year of a disclaimed audit opinion in 22-23, whereas you as a council have 4 years of disclaimed audit opinions of one type or another, and therefore you are behind the trajectory and would not see a return to an unqualified opinion before 28-29 based on that time horizon. Clearly appreciate that management do have a desire to return on a quicker timeline than that, and we would be directed by guidance issued by MHCLG and the council's ability to service an audit before we make any decisions about whether a rebuild could be quicker. So just to conclude, we will be issuing a disclaimed audit opinion that will have 2 other matters in it relating to value for money weaknesses, and we are minded to issue statutory recommendations following the conclusion of the audit, which does link to the recommendations in this report. That's as much as I think I need to say, but happy to take questions when you're ready.
Members, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Ms. Knowles?
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you. Thank you, Mark, for your report. I think it is a very difficult read for the authority, and obviously, as a committee, we're concerned with the matters that have been raised within it. I think, though, as a committee, we're not surprised by some of the things that are in your report, particularly around the investigations and the housing inspection, because we have all been cited on that previously, and the management team and the chief executive have been very open with the organisation around those. So I am a little disappointed that you have not reflected in your reports the matter that the authority has been very open and transparent with you and made you aware of these at the beginning of your audits. It kind of reads a little bit like you're telling us for the first time, and it isn't something that is new to us. We are aware of those things. I think at the end of your spiel, you talked about a very positive relationship you have with the council, and the fact that you can see us on a really good trajectory, to get the right word out. And I suppose I'm disappointed that that's not actually reflected into the letter itself and into your report itself. And I know some of these are standard templates, and I appreciate you use the same standard template for all authorities. But when you talk about we have identified, but that's something that the authority has brought to your attention, I think it can be a little bit biting for the authority to read. So that's just a little bit of a feedback on perhaps some of the language that is being used. Maybe I could ask you to reflect on that a little bit as to whether or not some amendments might be able to be made to take that into consideration. I think the other thing we need to think about as an authority is that these are the accounts for 24-25, and a significant amount of work, like you have said, has been happening over the last 12 months. Yes, there's still a lot of work to be done. Yes, there are action plans, etc., being put in place, but the authority is on a better directory than it was. I don't think it helps matters that your report duplicates all the way through, in that you talk about errors and then they're then duplicated again under a different heading, under a different page. So as a reader, you can read it and you think, God, there's lots of errors, and then actually you appreciate actually no, you're still you're talking about the same errors. So again, for the public reading it, I think it's kind of it can be a little bit confusing, I think, to that extent. I think I've got a number of questions that I want to ask the auditors. Sorry, I apologise for my sort of my spiel there, but it's important to put that point across. I do have some questions of both officers and yourselves as auditors, if you don't mind, and I'm quite happy to pause to let other people come in for questions as well, Chair. So I apologise.
First one, and we'll work our way around.
We'll work our way around. Okay, so the first question that I had was around the AGS not being published with the accounts in the first place. So I suppose this is a question to officers. Why wasn't the AGS published with the accounts at the time in which they were published? Because I do recall it coming to the audit committee for review and challenge. So I'm just wanted to understand why it hadn't been included in the accounts when it had actually been published.
The audit committee that came to was in July.
Right.
As soon as it was ready and had been approved and signed to come to that committee was when we added it to the
Anyway.
application. It was just the timing.
Okay, thank you.
But we've factored that in for this year.
For this year, so we're not sort of behind the ball next going forward. Thank you.
Who's next? Councillor Dearson.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a question for the officers. The external audit talks about the council making a repayment of 1.8 million grant scheme money. It's on page 152 of the audit report. Can someone please clarify if it was an actual repayment of money, or was it that the council never claimed the money because the grant scheme closed?
It's the latter. So the way it's phrased as the risk, and it appears in numerous places throughout the report, is incorrect.
And we need to have that
And it
changed.
needs to be amended.
Could I ask for that to be changed,
Yes.
please? Because it's making a wrong assumption about
Yeah,
council.
no, it's incorrect.
Thank you very much.
Next person, who's next? Questions?
Can I just follow up on Councillor Dearson's comments there? Were they received at EY, and can we get confirmation that that correction will be made?
We disagree with that fact pattern, so we stand by our report.
So if I can just clarify, because the what reads, Mark, is that due to a repayment of 1.8 million of grant scheme monies to a government department and the subsequent recording of a receivable. Just the subsequent recording of receivable I have no issue with. The issue is that the grant money, the application for the 1.8 was never made, so it was missing from the original application. So it was never a repayment. Those scheme monies were never submitted.
And therefore never received.
And therefore never received, yes.
So we can't have a statement that says
sorry, Councillor Wilson. So, Mark, we have confirmation from Bays to that effect.
Well, that is not evidence that we had been provided with, and that is not the fact pattern that we were told as part of the audit procedures.
Well, I'm struggling to understand that, because that information was part of the pack that I provided to you, but I will take that away and look at what was provided.
Thank you.
I get that point, but we've been asked to sign off on this, and if there's an incorrect statement in there, then I have a concern.
We're not being asked to sign this letter.
So, right, okay.
We're asked to sign and agree the accounts, which is different.
Councillor Harbison.
I was just going to follow up on the statements that was just made. So, Mark, from your point of view, have you got evidence to prove that the statement in the report is correct on your behalf, as opposed to the evidence that we've got?
The information we had is that grant monies were received by the council, which were repaid to the department, and then a debtor was placed in the accounts because it was believed that they would get those monies back.
Noted. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next question, anybody? Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm just clarifying, because obviously this is part of the discussion we are having in order to vote on agreeing this. We've got quite a major discrepancy between what we are voting on and what the external auditor is telling us in the report, and that's quite a significant discrepancy, which I cannot vote on.
Okay. So all I would say from a factual position, the material issue is in relation to the recording of the matter in the accounts and the way that the accounting treatment was held. The fact pattern, as Mark refers to it, is if correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but is less of the issue that because that's the fact that gave rise to the accounting treatment.
So
Yeah,
you're correct. It's the accounting treatment of having a debtor at the 31st of March, which is the critical issue for approving a set of statement of accounts. Correct. But we do have bank statements that showed the council did repay that money as part of our audit.
Okay, that's a different sum of money, and again I can prove that.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And I think that's important because if we got 1.8, if we got that money came in and then it was returned and not recoverable, that's completely different because that's a 1.8 million write-off of money that we had versus Angela's point. And if Angela is correct, then this needs to me. It needs to change.
One of these reports is wrong.
Yeah, and they need to be clarified of what that is.
Can I perhaps,
Rose?
but if I can give some advice from the independent perspective, I think we need to take offline the issue about the facts, because I think that some further work obviously needs to be done, and there needs to be a discussion between the chief exec and Mark. In terms of approving the accounts tonight, we need to be asking whether or not all the appropriate material changes have been made that the auditor has requested, that we're satisfied that those changes that were not corrected are due to materiality, and that we're happy with that, and that we're happy that the AGS has been changed in line with what the auditor has requested. From that, if the answers to those are all correct, then there would be no reason for us not to then approve the financial statements as they stand, because the issue around the grant bit is something that needs to be taken offline and dealt with. How it's treated in the accounts, which is what we're here to approve tonight, is what we are voting on. Okay.
Do we need the answers to those questions?
No. The answer to the three questions that I've just given, yes, but I'll ask those as part of our discussions, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Carry on.
So yes, I've I've got some questions around for officers, because obviously, as I said, the RAG ratings, Mark, that you have put into your report around some of the issues that have been identified. I think we as a committee want some assurances from officers that moving forward, there are going to be things in place to make sure that those don't happen again. So in terms of there are quite a lot of adjustments that were needed to the accounts. And I suppose a comment that I think we talked about previously was that many of those sort of changes could have really been picked up before the audit had occurred. Some of them were typographicals where there was casting that didn't match, etc., etc. And I wondered if that was predominantly due to time pressures that the staff were under. I know that Carrie had only recently just joined us, so having to pick this up in the midst of it happening, as it were. So I just kind of wanted to understand what was going to be put in place for this year, for this year's accounts, to make sure that the amount of sort of type errors that we wouldn't expect to see is going to be as minimal as possible. And then also on the errors where things were not in the right year because of the accounting year, so the accruals and prepayment side of things, where invoices were treated in the incorrect period, what processes we're putting in place to make sure that that doesn't happen for this time round, really, to give us assurance that you're doing some testing yourself, or you've got something in process that will mean that they should be minimal, if not none.
I'll take that one, Chair, if that's okay. So in regards to the first point, the finance team is now significantly larger than it was previously. And as you've mentioned, Carrie was new to the authority when we were starting to compile this current statement of accounts before us. Now that we're a lot more settled state, we've got much more capacity, we'll be able to undertake further and additional reviews. And we won't be under quite as much pressure as we were at this time last year. So that will help address the former part of your question. Regarding the second part of your question, which was about the errors and stuff. So with that, one of the things that we've been doing is rolling out additional training for the budget holders that we're submitting the information to the finance team. So that'll be undertaken just to ensure that our budget holders are very clear on what the requirements are for them. In addition to that, the finance team will, as they do normally anyway, will undertake variance analysis as part of the balances. So as an example, if there's a budget of £100 and it looks like the spend is only £80, is that because there's something missing, or is that a legitimate variance? And likewise, so we'll be undertaking that variance testing as well.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Councillor Dearson.
Hi, Mark. I just have it's probably me, but it's just for a knowledge share. On page 187, we talk about the assurance ratings. And I see that we've got things like we've completed our planned audit procedure, obtained assurance over the closing balances, etc., etc., and it's got assurance full. When we go to page 188, we have quite a number of items where it says we've completed our planned testing. We are unable to obtain full assurance over the amount for 24-25. Yet the assurance we're giving to a number of those items is full. I'm just trying to understand how they would be full if you haven't been able to get the assurance, whereas on page 187, they're full because you've got the assurance.
That's your page 42, by the way.
Sorry. It's 1 on the it's 1. Yeah, okay, sorry.
2 page numbers.
All right, sorry. Yeah, on page 42, sorry. So it says, yeah, we've completed our plan testing. We're unable to obtain full assurance over the amount. And then you've got assurance as full. I'm just trying to understand how they would be full. I get it on page 41, but I don't get it on page 42. It's a bit confusing.
For the grant income line, yes.
Well, there's a number of them. There's the housing service expenditure, the REFCUS, the expenditure depreciation, the grant income. They all say that you've been unable to obtain the assurance, but you've put them all as full assurance. So I wonder if you can just explain how they are full assurance if you haven't been able to obtain the assurance.
That'll be one I have to take away.
If you could, because
Agreed.
we're signing off on this stuff and that doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Chair. And also, Mark, could you also have a look at page 29? Because when you gave your summation to us, you said that the total number of uncorrected errors was not material, but in the report it says is material. So again, that might need to be amended unless I've read that wrong. It's on page 29, one of the bottom lines. Yeah, the total impacts of the uncorrected misstatements on the income statement was also material. But in your spiel, you said it was not material.
Leave that one with me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think perhaps maybe it might be worth having a proper full look over the report to make sure there are no other misstatements in there and that it accurately reflects position. Sorry, I've got more questions if nobody else has. Sorry, thank you. In terms of property, plant and equipment, I understand that the council uses an external valuer. Is that correct? Can I ask why there were delays in getting information to the auditor then? If it's, I can understand internal pressures for us as an authority and there may be delays, but given that we've used an external evaluator, I don't understand why there would be delays in getting information to the auditor.
The initial values, there was no delay, they were all received on time. This was the follow-up queries and they were received over the Christmas period as well. So there was, it was timing.
Timing, okay, thank you. And also, and please bear with me in terms of my naivety around this. If we have employed an external valuer who comes up with a value, and then your valuer does a piece of work and comes up with a different value, which value is correct? Because I bet if we employed a third valuer, they would come up with another value.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to understand logically why we automatically defer to your valuation rather than the council's expert valuation. Not saying that yours aren't expert, obviously, but I'm just saying why choose one over the other, particularly if there's not a massive, we're not talking millions and millions of pounds of difference here.
So the value that management employ is only as good as the scope of work it's given and the information it's provided with to come up with its valuation basis. And clearly our role is to be, or is as an independent auditor, to cross-check that. And if we think that management of the valuer has not used an appropriate methodology or has not taken full account of the facts, or indeed not been furnished with the full fact pattern in order to perform its valuation, then our valuer would come to a different valuation and we would therefore challenge the council.
Okay, so without getting into too much detail then, which of those points then that you've raised is the issue that you have in terms of our valuer? Because if we've got issues in that they've not done it right, that needs to be sorted with them going forward. Sorry.
Yeah, if I can tack a question on the end, are there specific recommendations for actions we should be taking to improve the service we're getting from the valuer? Because we've got lots of other specific recommendations, but I didn't see any myself on that.
So there isn't a specific recommendation. You're correct. So it would be a mixture of elements of all of those things that I said, and or indeed our valuer taking a different view based on the information before them and their national perspective.
Okay, I'm not convinced, but okay.
Councillor Harbison.
So sorry, through you, Chair, to Mark, this might be my sort of naivety, but if you get something valued, normally you get 3 valuations. Not in this instance, obviously, I'm just sort of dumbing it down for my own brain in terms of property. So is this your personal opinion that these things wasn't done, or is there policies in place as to why your valuation would top ours? So I'm just trying to understand Paula's point, if that makes sense.
So clearly we employ our own valuer who we consider to be an auditor expert, and we would always rely on their figure. In the majority of cases, they provide a range for an asset to have a value in, and you would expect a council's valuer to have their asset fall in that range. And clearly in a couple of instances here, it's fallen outside of that range. And the ranges are pretty broad. So it must be down to, as I said, the way in which the valuer has constructed their valuation method based on inputs or their own assumptions, which we are therefore challenging. So yeah, we would always rely on our valuer.
Okay. Can I follow that up then? I think if I can ask management then perhaps maybe to take this offline with the external auditor to then discuss between our valuer and their valuer as to how this difference has occurred and then how it will be used going forward so that we're not in the same position in a few months' time when the 25-26 audit is happening. So we don't want to kind of recreate errors that have availed. But obviously, again, the value of a property is only worth the value of a property on the day in which it's sold. So in terms of major impact on the finances of the council, it's not such a big thing. Okay, sorry.
Any more?
I have, yes. I'm really, really sorry. In terms of the stock conditions survey, do we know when that is likely to be completed?
The stock condition surveys for housing expected to be completed by the end of March.
End of March. Okay, brilliant. And what is being done about the heritage assets where there isn't sufficient evidence at the moment around their value? What work are we doing to shore up that evidence ready for the next review?
That has been flagged as low risk in there. We had some discussion with the auditors and essentially the Dutch cottage has been valued and is valued as part of our programme. That is the only asset that we can get valued.
Right.
The rest are sort of memorabilia and monuments, so that we can't get those values. And I'm going to do a little piece of work to look against the code and just ensure that we're complying with that.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor McCarthy-Carver.
Chair, I'm sorry, I'm just I'm sitting here rather just not happy with the technical issues that have happened that have seen us adjourn to this room. Now hearing that there's a lot of discrepancy between the auditors and what we're voting on, and I feel maybe this meeting should be adjourned and we can reconvene when these discrepancies are addressed.
Agreed.
Can I move?
Well, the only thing I would say we've got to be careful of.
Yeah,
we have
I'm
to sign.
sorry, I am not happy.
We have to sign up by Friday, or we're going to be in breach. So we have to.
But I'd rather face that than sign off. That I want clarity when we're looking at such
that's valid.
huge differences between what the independent auditors are saying and what is presented in front of us in terms of.
I think though, sorry, Chair, if you'd indulge me, I think that the actual accounts, all the errors that the auditor has identified have been picked up and addressed in the accounts. So as far as I'm aware, unless officers correct.
I wouldn't just say save for the ones that we've identified non-adjusted.
As non-adjusted, yes. So if I go back to the sort of the maybe we need to ask these three questions then is, has the authority made all the relevant material changes to the financial statements that the auditors deem necessary? Yes. So that's a yes. The uncorrected misstatements that total around 250,000, why has the council decided not to correct these? Is that because they're below materiality?
In totality, they're all below materiality. Some relate to the prior years, and some are also extrapolations of errors and therefore not true errors. And as I said, in totality, they're below materiality. So we have not adjusted.
Thank you. And then has the AGS been adequately updated to reflect the weaknesses that in the auditor's report around the value for money aspects?
Yes.
So that's the housing inspection and the investigation.
Yes, and that's been through internal audit, the chief executive and the leader as well.
Okay. So Mark, are you able to confirm as of the auditor that you're happy that all the material misstatements have been corrected and the AGS has been updated as you had indicated?
I am.
You are. Okay. So as the independent person, I'm quite happy that the accounts as are laid in front of us can be approved. Maybe if we could just look at what the recommendations of the report are, that might be helpful. Sorry, I feel like I'm
Can we go back to Councillor first? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. And while I appreciate the independent person's input as an independent person, as a politician on this council, I am not willing to put my political name to a meeting that has been adjourned to be partly in private, as in not live streamed, when we've got these quite significant issues that I know I personally am going to take flag for, online and on the doorstep outside of this. And I think the meeting should have been adjourned when we had the technical difficulties, and I feel very much now that this meeting should have been adjourned, because I just feel deeply uncomfortable the way that this has unfolded, and now I've got to vote on something that I don't feel happy with when we've got this question about this 1.8 million that I know is going to be talked about an awful lot of why this meeting was adjourned to be semi-private.
I mean, just an observation, this meeting's being recorded to be streamed.
Yeah.
So we're not in
I
a
know.
private session.
I know.
Chair, if I can,
Advice,
if it assists Councillor Calvert, the facts of the 1.8 million are separate. They are subject to investigation which is concluding, recommendations of which are to be wrapped up in the statutory recommendations which the auditor has indicated, and will be the subject of a separate report into this committee. So the issue for the purposes of this account is the way in which the accounting treatment took place in respect of those numbers. The facts as to how the error happened in the first place are separate, and I will be coming to this committee under a separate cover.
Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I was only going to really say on Clinton's point, if the 1.8 million did come in and then has gone back, then in respect, it's, am I right, Angela, that it's more a lost opportunity to gain that money back than anything else? Because obviously we would, have we taken a write-off because we sent the 1.8 million back, or is it just a lost opportunity? Because at the end of the day, weren't we as the council ensuring that local businesses?
So in accounting terms, which is what you're here to discuss this evening, the issue was recorded as monies owed to the council in the 2023-24 accounts. Therefore, that sum appeared in the opening balance of the 24-25 accounts as money owed to the council. During the course of the financial year 24-25, that entry was reversed when it became clear that the monies could not be recovered from government. As a consequence of this audit and the work that Mark and his team have done, they put it in as a prior, I forget the exact term, sorry. They asked for the adjustment to be made to the 23-24 accounts, which is on the which was, as was identified to you, the prior period adjustment that Ms Cox read out earlier. So that is the adjustment that's been made to the accounts as a consequence of the work that's been undertaken in this audit. The descriptor that appears in relation to the description of the risk is something that I will take offline and discuss with Mark. And certainly the recommendations that come from the investigation are intended to be part of the statutory recommendation that Mark will be putting forward. So again, we'll be working on those. As I say, the facts as to how this issue came about are not relevant for the purposes of these accounts, because the facts took place in the 22-23 financial year. Mr. Barnes, my chair, I think.
Yes.
I'll let Mr.
Carry on.
Barnes first.
I was just again trying to assist the committee and the members. The recommendation is about the approval of the financial statements, and I wonder if it'd be useful if Mark could advise you and whether he thinks you should be approving the financial statements as they stand.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard.
Good.
If I could just through you, Chair, to Chief Exec. Maybe it's me being a little bit naive, but by agreeing these funds, are we not then automatically agreeing the audit results report that's in front of us now? Are the two being, that's how I'm looking at it. If we agree those, then we automatically agree this, which then means the discrepancies would still stand. Is that not correct?
You're noting the report.
So through you, Chair.
I don't want to note it.
What we can do though is we could propose a change of wording to that recommendation.
Right.
That the chief executive takes that report offline with with Mark to correct a number of misstatements in it, and then it will be then down to the chair to. Well, we're not approving anyway. We're only noting it.
Yes, you're only.
So we can note that we have received it, that we're not happy because there are some errors that need to be corrected, and that we request that the chief executive take that offline and deal with it. Then that way that takes that element away.
Yeah.
But perhaps maybe if we follow Andrew's suggestion and ask the Mark whether or not you feel that we
Perhaps we can go through the chair.
Sorry.
I was waiting to. Sorry, I was literally going to just ask Mark for clarification, because I'm very certain that what I heard him say was that he's absolutely sure his report is correct in the noting of this 1.8 million that came into the council and went back out again.
With evidence, he said.
With evidence. And I just wanted to clarify that with him. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lund.
Just as an observation through the chair, I audit globally, America, Saudi, and in Europe. And we do use the same sort of format and then tend to cut and paste. And I think the whole report, last year I thought it but didn't say it because I was quite new. But I do feel there's a lot of mistakes in it that just shows that it isn't a report for our council. It's generic, and it needs to be more about us.
Specific,
And like you picked up on quite a few of the lines, and I think it needs to be amended.
Which I think, through you, Chair, I think the auditor has said that he will go away and have a look at those various bits.
Some of them
with the chief exec. But
Councillor Carby.
Chair, sorry, could I just go back to my previous request to confirm with the auditor about what he stated about the 1.8 million in his report? Thank you.
Mark, could you go back over that again, please, for councillors here?
Based on the evidence that we were provided with as part of the audit, the statements we have in our audit results report, we stand by currently.
You have the evidence to prove what you're saying, yeah? You said
On the
you've got
audit
bank
evidence
statements.
provided to us, yes, we do.
So you're telling me that you've got the bank statements that you can say, yeah, that came here, it went out, or whatever, yeah?
We do have the bank statements.
Councillor Harbison.
Through you, Chair, to Mark, would you be willing to provide that evidence to members of the committee, so then we've got it, so we can have a look?
We've got it.
It's the council information.
It is from us, apologies.
Lance.
Thank you, Chair. It might help the committee to understand that there was a repayment of 1.7 million of grant funds to Bays. It was 1.7 million. That predominantly relates to a different grant funding stream, all well and be it COVID grants, but it is not the element that was not claimed for in the first place, as explained by the Chief Executive earlier this evening.
Doesn't say that in the report.
But no, but the bank statement that EY were provided with at their request, I believe only today, or yesterday, is in relation to the 1.7 million, which predominantly relates to a different grant funding stream.
Can you confirm that, Mark?
I can confirm we got the bank statement yesterday, yes.
Is it in relation to 1.7 million or 1.8 million?
I would have to check. Don't have it in front of me at the moment.
I think it'd be nice if you turned up at the meeting so we could talk to you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you.
Mark, could you please give the committee a steer as to whether or not you feel that we are in a position and should sign off the financial statements for 24-25, please?
Ordinarily, I would, but because we're issuing a disclaimed opinion, we're not giving the committee assurance over the financial statement, so it would be very difficult to do so. What I would say is you have gone through due process, and the points you made, Ms Mills, are appropriate in that any audit adjustments that we have identified and reported in our audit results report the council has made in the adjusted column. The unadjusted ones are below our materiality threshold, and management are at liberty not to adjust for those on those grounds. And the annual governance statement has been updated, as we have discussed, and approved with the chief executive and the leader. So all the issues that we have identified and asked to be amended for have been, but that is in the context that we are disclaiming the audit on the grounds that I set out originally.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCarthy-Calvert.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we adjourn and reconvene with the auditors present in the chamber to discuss these matters. I think there needs to be clarity over this matter, and I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second that. Vote, everybody.
Do we get to debate this at all before we?
Yes, debate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, we need to debate that then.
So are there any questions other than mine? I mean, I'm listening to what's said, that the purpose of this meeting now, and I mean, I'm not happy with the fact that we appear to have inconsistencies between the words and the red, amber, green. I'm not happy to hear that there seems to be, at this late stage, some debate over, well, A, that we're still getting requests for evidence yesterday, and that we're getting debate over, you know, the difference between £100,000 on one grant repayment and another seems to be something that should have been resolved a long time ago. But the changes that have been requested to the AGR are done. Everybody on both sides of the discussion is happy about the position of the financial treatment of the grant in the account, and they're accurate. And as far as I can see, the difference is for the unreconciled amounts, well, not unreconciled, but the other amounts that everybody agrees are not material, despite what the report says. That's just a matter of, and if you can just confirm this, basically invoices have come in, people have held on to them and not signed them off for a few days, and it's fallen into the next year, or vice versa. They came in late and didn't get recorded in the current year, which happens at year end. Now it requires discipline to fix, and you've mentioned that you're doing training. So we've got, from my perspective, the actual accounts can be signed, voted, agreed by this committee. But I'm not happy to note the report, and I think we should do what was suggested, separate the two and ensure that before we agree to note the report as accurate, because noting the report and just nodding your head at it is not what we're going to do. But we can ask for the corrections to be made to the report, or sorry, that's predisposed, but ask for the report to be looked at again, and then we can treat the two as separate issues, because I don't think the report is accurate to reflect what we're all saying. I think there's just maybe some errors in there. So I can't support throwing the whole lot out, and so won't be voting to support that.
That's Jason.
I agree totally with Alan. I can't support throwing it out, but I would like it to be noted along the points that you've made that I have a number of concerns. I raised the points around items that saying as they're full of assurances when there aren't full assurances there. You're asking me to sign off the same as Councillor McCarthy says, to sign off that I have full assurance over this report, and I don't have full assurance. I will sign off, but I would like it noted that this committee has concerns about the data provided by EY in their reporting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's for the committee to decide as it sees fit. I just wanted to make the point that if the meeting was to be adjourned and therefore the accounts brought forward to a further meeting, there wouldn't actually be any difference to the statement of accounts itself. There was nothing left to adjust. And I'd ask the committee to give due consideration to that fact.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I very much support colleagues here in terms of the way in which we approach it. I also think it's worth noting that your 23-24 accounts, which were disclaimed, were approved by the committee. And actually, if you look at the page where you've got where assurance, they've got full assurance, or where they've got none assurance, last year it was red across the whole board and you approved the statement of accounts. This year it's predominantly green, which shows a marked improvement in the assurances that the auditor has been able to obtain. Therefore, you're in a better position.
Can I just interject there? We know the progress. I think the question that Councillor Dearson raised is that the red, amber, green rating is inconsistent with what's actually stated in the rest of the table. And I think that's the committee objection on that. The progress, I don't think the whole report reflects the progress because it's so historic.
I think, sorry, for you, Chair, it's a case of it was all red last year and you approved the statement of accounts. Therefore, I don't see that errors means that the fact that we haven't got full assurance from the auditor doesn't mean we can't approve a statement of accounts. I think it's what I'm trying to get at.
Chief Executive, can you advise me as to how we can split this so that we've got
So,
accounts signed off?
at the moment you have a live motion, Chair. So you should invite the rest of the committee to make any observations or discussions and then put the motion to the vote.
Any further comments from anybody? Vote. Whether we go to adjourn the meeting or not.
Yes.
Whether everybody for?
So, sorry,
Would anyone, I mean, before I say, so we're looking at voting on this, but we've had a proposal for an amendment.
so at the moment you've still got the motion which you proposed, Councillor McCarthy-Calvert, which has been seconded. So that
Okay, we'll vote on that
needs
first.
to be dealt with first, yeah.
So vote on the first one from Councillor McCarthy-Calvert. Anybody for? Against? One abstain. Carry on.
Sorry, so just to confirm for the record,
But for the record, it's against.
the motion was.
Motion.
I think through you, Chair, that there's a proposal that Councillor McCarthy-Calvert made reference to that was around potential amendment to one of the recommendations.
Totally.
So it's a recommendation 3, Chair. I mean, I don't mind proposing the amendment in that we sort of put some good words around the fact that the committee reviewed the audit results report for the year ending the 31st of March, as set out in Appendix 2. We're not happy that there are a number of potential errors and as such request that the Chief Exec and the Auditor meet to rectify those.
Fine.
Can I
Make it better wording, whatever.
can I I would suggest that we just simply split part 3 because we still also need to sign the letter of representation. So if you want to come up with all the words there, but I don't think we should not sign the letter of representation because I don't think the changes that we've asked for or the bits to be asked for in the report will change the letter of representation. So I think that we should be splitting 3 into 3 and 4 and then progress beyond that separately.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm not sure that's a formal recommendation. So, I mean, doing it on Do you want to withdraw your recommendation?
Oh, I'll withdraw what I did basically.
It's not really a motion yet, it's just a discussion.
Okay, as long as we don't have to do that, that's fine. It might.
Coming up with some good wording there, Angela.
I'll attempt to.
Can I ask any other questions while we're on? Karen. Right. Hello, Mark. Just another question while we're waiting on that. I know that if we go to, just bear with me a minute. The page 40 where we talk, obviously we know we're going to get a disclaimer for 24, 25 and 25, 26. We likely is it'll be qualified rather than disclaimed. And I know you mentioned that in 28, 29, there may be an opportunity to get rid of that unqualified disclaimer in effect. I suppose as a councillor that cares about this council and the amount of fantastic work I think we've done over the last couple of years with transformation, etc., and noting that currently 2028 is LGR, I was hoping that before we get to LGR that we may be able to get to a status where we're not disclaimed. What would we need to do as a council, and how can we work in collaboration with you, and what would we need to do to get rid of that disclaimer before the LGR at 2028?
So it's a good question, and a number of members in different councils have asked a very similar question because LGR is clearly looming for everybody. What I would say is that in order to rebuild assurances, there is a national programme led by the National Audit Office about how you can, as an auditor, not just us, go about rebuilding those assurances from the lost years, if you like. And the more lost years you have in terms of years that have been disclaimed, the greater the work that is needed to do. Albeit that our Appendix B needs updating, you have, as Ms Mills says, moved forward significantly from last year, and the audit has been able to provide levels of assurance and complete testing in year. So step one is underway, and we will be having closed down workshops with Lance and Carrie about how further improvements linked to our recommendations can be made and what the council would need to do to support any rebuild programme that is put forward. So clearly there is an aspiration both for you as members, MHCLG as a department, and frankly auditors to get back to unqualified as quickly as possible. 28, 29 is based on the current trajectory with how many disclaimed years you currently have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For you, Chair. Mark, why does the number of disclaimed years make a difference? You draw a line in the sand and you start building forward from there. I don't understand why a number of years going backwards were disclaimed has an impact on that moving forward.
Because the most important balance in council terms is reserves, because it impacts on council tax, and you just can't start from a year at random and say the reserve position that you've inherited then is correct.
That's why you're building up over a number of years.
That's why you have to go back to and make sure the last known audited position going forward from there is correct in every subsequent balance sheet date. So there are some transactions you can do between 2 points and 31st of March, which we should be able to do a number of next year based on completing this year's procedures, but reserves is the big ticket item that you cannot just do that in between single years when you've got a multiple disclaimed years.
On reserves, just a position as at a point in time at the end of each financial year, and then therefore they can be substantiated. Either they're usable reserves that are backed by real assets, or they're notional reserves backed by a combination of assets and movements across a period of time.
With a significant number of accounting adjustments in local government. And that is the area where fraud could manifest itself. So no is the audit answer to that.
Can I just, I think you said you were drawing that line in the sand, so are we drawing that line in the sand now in effect, or for 25, 26? Or are we drawing the line from 24 to 25, or are we not drawing that line in the sand yet?
We're not drawing the line in terms of reserves because that is a bigger question to rebuild. There are some account items that we can go forward from 24, 25 on, but it's not all of them within the statement of accounts and Appendix B.
Is there a reason why we haven't been able to do that? Is it the roadblock is us as the council that we haven't been able to start that process for then, or is that just the fact that we don't have the ability to be able to do that because the resources to do that? Because I know when we talked last year or the year before, I asked a question around where we draw the line in the sand, and I think the answer came back that it would be too costly and that there would be too much work to be able to go all the way back and then come all the way forward. And I get that. I mean, I've run lots of bank accounts globally, and you've got to pick a point. But if you're going to go all the way back, then that's a massive bit. Where do you start that point from? But so I'm just trying to understand is the fact that we haven't started that yet because there's still a roadblock, or maybe I'm just waffling. But you know where I'm coming, because we need to start that point. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going and going and going.
In a professional audit environment, you would need to go back and audit each of the unaudited financial years to gain full assurance. And as you say, that is entirely time intensive and costly, and that is not what MHCLG want to do. So the rebuild work stream, which I referred to, is trying to work out how audit firms can get comfortable that the inherited position could be correct and go forward from that. And that's going to potentially take a risk basis. So you wouldn't need to test 100% of all the transactions in each of the unaudited years. But the clarity around that has not yet come forward. So where the line is drawn and how much testing you need to do to move forward from there is clearly the unknown currently.
Is there an opportunity to put some wording around that within the audit report of that there isn't the opportunity to go, and I don't mean we put it like that, but that we can't go all the way back, but that the work started to get rid of that disclaimer, because otherwise it looks like to the general public we've continually got a disclaimer because we've got an issue, but that we're not doing the work around getting rid of that disclaimer, when I think there's a lot of good work being done in this council. And, and obviously by yourselves in the audit and you're doing et cetera, and somewhere I think I'd like to see something reflected in the financial statement that says that we're, and then is that, you're more of an expert than me than this stuff, but I don't know, it's just.
So the National Audit Office guidance that we refer to in that appendix, I mean, you could use, because that does set out elements of what I've just said, and that is the extant guidance available in the sector.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Chairman. Through you, I think it might be useful, Mark, if perhaps on the particular element of the report where it talks about that we're behind the curve in terms of when we're likely to get a unqualified opinion, if perhaps maybe you could put a little bit more of an explanation in there, because I think there's some bullet points, and I think maybe if we could expand that a little bit just to explain what you've explained to us tonight in there, that would be helpful.
Happy to consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. I think we're ready to move on.
I've just got one question, Chair, if you don't please indulge me. The recommendations that are in the report that have been made by the external auditor, can I just have assurance or clarification as to whether or not the council have accepted those recommendations? So it's the three that have been made.
Yes, I confirm through you, Chair, that we have agreed with those recommendations. Yeah, or accepted the recommendations. Yeah.
Accepted. Thank you.
Questions finished? Enough.
So thank you, Chair. So the proposal is from comments that have been raised by Councillor McCarthy-Calvert and by the independent person, Ms Mills, that, and indeed Councillor Edwards, that the motion which should be moved by you, Chair, from the Chair, is that the second part of recommendation 3 be separated out so that there is a new recommendation 4, which reads that the Section 151 officer and the chair of this committee sign the letter of representation, brackets Appendix 3, which replicates the wording that's currently in the second half of recommendation 3. And that then recommendation 3 should be amended to read that the committee's concerns regarding the contents of the audit results report be noted, and that the chief executive raises with the external auditor the potential errors in the audit results report identified by the committee, and that any errors are subsequently corrected. That's the proposal, which is, I hope, is the intent that you were looking for, and it's the members' chair to consider whether or not they feel that that is a recommendation or a drafting that they can get behind before it's formally moved.
Chair, can I just listen to the recommendation again?
Yes. The motion is that the second part of recommendation 3 be separated out so that there is a new recommendation 4, which reads that the Section 151 officer and the chair of this committee sign the letter of representation, brackets Appendix 3, close brackets, and that recommendation 3 should be amended to read that the committee's concerns regarding the contents of the audit results report be noted, and that the chief executive raises with the external auditor the potential errors in the audit results report identified by the committee, and that any errors are subsequently corrected.
You mentioned, Miss Mills, through the chair, you mentioned about the language. Would we add that to it? Or would that be?
Well, I think the
language in errors.
Yeah, language in errors is.
So that would change the last bit of the recommendation. The recommendation 3 should be amended to read that the committee's concerns regarding the contents of the audit results report be noted, and that the chief executive raises with the external auditor the language and potential errors in the audit results report identified by the committee, and that any errors are subsequently corrected.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. You need a proposer in a second.
So, Chair,
you're a second.
Members, I move the motion that the second part of recommendation 3 be separated out so that there is now a recommendation 4, which reads that the Section 151 officer and the chair of this committee sign the letter of representation, brackets on Appendix 3, brackets off. That the recommendation 3 should be amended to read that the committee's concerns regarding the contents of the audit results report be noted, and that the chief executive raises with the external auditor the language and the potential errors in the audit results report identified by the committee, and that any errors are subsequently corrected. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Councillor Dearson, thank you.
So, Chair, it's so that if once you vote on that, it's then these recommendations will replace recommendation 3 in this report. And at that point, Chair, I wonder whether the committee wishes to consider returning to the chamber for the purposes of taking the recommendations on the live stream.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So on that basis, Chair, I think for the purposes of the recording, if we can confirm that the intention is for this committee to adjourn for 5 minutes to return to the chamber so that the full recommendations can be taken in the live stream.
Yeah, everybody agree? 5 minutes, so we can. Agreed, thank you.
We've got to move fast because we've got 3